wrote Captain Oliver Hazard Perry, who died this day, August 23, 1819. Captain Perry encountered 6 powerful British warships in the Battle of Lake Erie during the War of 1812. With no long-range firepower, the winds prevented him from getting in a safe position, and the British cannons crippled his flagship. In a courageous move, he switched to the ship Niagara, sailed directly into the British line, firing broadside, and won the battle in 15 minutes. To the sailors on deck, he remarked, "The prayers of my wife are answered."
This has been an American Minute with Bill Federer. For a free transcript, call American Minute at 1-888-USA-WORD. VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And right out of the gate here today, we will bring you some breaking news. We thank you for joining us on the VCY America Radio Network. In for Jim Schneider, I am Dalton Windsor, also joined today by attorney Randy Melchert, who is joining us from the field today in Wisconsin, out on location, and then also Pastor Richard Schmidt, both gentlemen here with us. Guys, thank you for coming in today, coming along.
Glad to be with you.
All right, Randy, we have you. And we are also monitoring right now, Pastor Schmidt, we're also monitoring, as we speak, some pretty big news here.
Well, it appears that RFK is about to pull out of the campaign, so we've been trying to monitor it. He hasn't quite gotten there yet, but I think that's where he's headed.
With whom I disagree on the most existential issues, censorship, war, and chronic disease. I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name will remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I encourage you to vote for me.
Well,
and if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269. And I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election.
RFK Jr. was expected to possibly not suspend his campaign, which he just announced, but he was actually expected to do what, Pastor?
Well, this is an amazing news clip right now, and this was live. I'm a little bit shocked. I thought he actually, based on the person that he had picked for the VP position, she kind of went out there and said he might resign today. Well, it appears that that was fake news, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to see RFK still in it. And I'll be shocked if he pulls ahead somehow, but I guess we'll see what happens now.
If you have not been following RFK Jr. and his run for president, obviously leaving the Democratic Party, and I'm not sure at what time he went independent with his campaign, but that's where he stands as of today.
Well, there we go. And we got the Republican, the Democrats, and now RFK is apparently still in with both feet. But he, quote unquote, is suspending, that's what he stated, he's suspending his campaign, but remaining on the ballot. So, again, this is a very, very interesting development. For you, listening friend, you come to expect Fridays to be a very jam-packed filled program of news, and so we just brought you live as it was being released, as it was being shared through the media world. That from RFK Jr. today. We do have some headline news. Some of the top stories of the week that we're going to embark to bring you inside of this hour, as we always do on a Friday News Roundup and Comment. Obviously, the lead story of the week has been the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, Illinois.
Monday through Thursday, special speakers as the entire Democratic Party rallied around their nominee, current Vice President Kamala Harris, and then, of course, her pick for VP in Tim Walz, the current governor of Minnesota. And so it's been a big week of speeches and those promoting and stunting for one another. And Randy, are you still with us?
I'm here with you, and yes, in fact, especially what I thought was interesting with RFK is his note that it could end up being 9 to 269. I've looked at the maps, and potentially the entire election could come down to the city of Omaha. The way Nebraska does it is they don't allocate delegates as an entire state. They do it by district. So he's caught on to the fact that depending on how Omaha goes, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. But thank you very much, Dalton. I know this is the News Roundup Day, and so we've got just 4 of the top kind of stories that I've seen over the week that we've got some of the sound bites for. The first one, we look at the Constitution and the freedom to petition for redress of grievances. Free speech is important, but outside the Chicago Convention Center area, Vivek Ramaswamy, and I believe this clip is from Daily Wire, was told that no, he has to have a certain kind of opinion for him to be present. Let's go to clip 1.
We do not have that clip yet, Randy. We do not have that clip. We've got several others that are ready to go, though, that are leaning more toward later in the program. So if you can, just kind of surmise a little bit where what all he was saying.
Fascinating clip that he was shouted down and told that if he wasn't a Zionist, he was not allowed to be there, that he had to share the opinions of the host. Otherwise, that he was offended at calling out Vivek Ramaswamy as a racist if he did not share the same opinions as the protesters there. So that was quite interesting. Do you have clips 2 through 4? Or?
Working on it.
Okay. All righty. So clip 2 of the second highlight, this was from earlier in the week. News Nation reporter Chris Cuomo, he used to be with ABC News. His brother was the governor of New York. His father was the governor of New York. And yet here he is on the floor of the Democrat convention calling out the control of the elites over the entire process, calling out these speakers, who many of these speakers would be telling about all the things they're going to do. And here is Chris Cuomo on the floor of the reality
that is literally looking down on them. Greg, look at the ring of sweets, okay? This is not unique to Democrats. There is a game of money. When people talk about uniparty, we are strangled by the money reality in our politics. Those suites start at $500,000. The media boxes, you think they're free? Why do you think I'm on the floor? Those boxes are filled with the same people that they say they're going to regulate. They are literally looking down on the faithful and being told, yeah, we're going to break down on them. We're going to make them pay their share. They paid $500,000, $700,000, $1 million, $1.5 million to have those seats.
So that was quite interesting to see somebody who definitely knows what the political elite structure is. It went on for about 10 minutes. This was just kind of some highlights of it. But just interesting that people are starting to speak up about the control of the elite. By the way, on the topic of political elites, our next clip, I believe, was from Ricky Gervais, Hollywood figure, actually more from the UK. But this was at the Golden Globes a few years ago, where he calls out the Hollywood establishment and realizes that, again, there is corruption at the highest level of the elites that are controlling our society. This is a collection of some of the different quotes that he had given during this speech, where this is one of Hollywood's fancy black tie parties, and their MC is calling them out.
Spoiler alert, season 2 is on the way, so in the end, he obviously didn't kill himself. Just like Jeffrey Epstein. Shut up! I know he's your friend, but I don't care. You had to make your own way here in your own plane, didn't you? Right. Apple roared into the TV game with a morning show, a superb drama about the importance of dignity and doing the right thing, made by a company that runs sweatshops in China. So, well, you say you're woke, but the companies you work for, I mean, unbelievable. Apple, Amazon, Disney. If ISIS started a streaming service, you'd call your agent, wouldn't you? So, if you do win an award tonight, Don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So...
It's just fascinating to see people calling out. These are members of the elite calling out the elites. That they're in no position to lead. Fourth clip I've got for today, going back to Monday, Trump was mentioned 147 times at the DNC, and yet by politicians. He's getting called out by politicians. This clip goes back to 2016 when Donald Trump spoke at the Al Smith dinner in New York City. And this is what Donald Trump had to say way back in 2016 about all the political class.
A special hello to all of you in this room who have known and loved me for many, many years. It's true. The politicians. They've had me to their homes. They've introduced me to their children. I've become their best friends in many instances. They've asked for my endorsement, and they always wanted my money. And even called me really a dear, dear friend. But then, suddenly, decided when I ran for president as a Republican that I've always been a no-good, rotten, disgusting scoundrel. And they totally forgot about me. But that's okay.
So this is just kind of my top 4 stories for the week, but just there seems to be awakening that the control that the elites have over America, people are starting to see through it. Even people you wouldn't expect, Ricky Gervais, Chris Cuomo, and again, it'll be interesting to see what RFK's final decisions are. But these are momentous times, and Dalton, glad to have been with you this week to discuss them.
We've been glad to have you with us. Thank you, Randy, for some of the firsthand info you've been able to share with us, and even some of the historical things that you've been able to share with all of us this week, looking back on these conventions and just the what that has brought us to this point. So we certainly appreciate that, and of course, Pastor Schmidt as well. And guys, both of you can comment if you'd like a little bit. We're going to do somewhat of a rewind to last night when Vice President Kamala Harris did take the stage. Randy, were you able to watch any of that last night?
Unfortunately, I had to prepare for an event today up here in Wisconsin Rapids, but looking forward to what Pastor Schmidt has to say. All right, Randy. Thank you. We know you've got to get back to things there, so we'll talk to you a little bit later on, and we will be coming up on a break here in about a minute there, Pastor, but I know that many folks may have just waited until last night for the grand finale of it all.
Right. Well, it was an extremely interesting day. I did painstakingly listen to all the speeches again, and when we come back from the break, we do have some very major clips that we took out of particularly Vice President Harris's speech. We also have an extremely interesting clip that we're going to play from Tim Walz, and I think in fairness, to get us started here, Kamala Harris, and they spent a great deal of time making sure we knew how to pronounce her name. It was actually kind of a cute clip with a couple of her nieces that were there. But Kamala Harris definitely, and we've got to be honest, she put on a show last night. Her speech was extremely strong. Her charisma, if you will, came out stronger than I've ever seen it. So she did. We're going to give her credit for giving a well-prepared speech, a well-given speech. The issues, though, are that we're going to examine are how do the two candidates compare? How does President Trump versus Vice President Harris, how are their policies matching up? And we actually got some of that information last night. So we are going to touch on that. And this has kind of been a secret, which is finally starting to be unveiled. And we're going to see that when we come back.
And aside from all of the reporting and such on the DNC, there have been some other pretty large news stories that probably are getting pushed to the back burner. We'll do our best to bring you a small handful of those as well inside of this hour, the time that we have. Could we maybe get this to be 2 hours today? Well, if we could. Stay with us. There's more Crosstalk when we continue.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist and author with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, before the fall of man, did animals suffer?
Chris, the Bible says at the end of creation week, things were very good. Things would live forever with no pain or death. With Adam's sin came the wages of sin. But evolutionists believe that animals lived and died long ago. In fact, the dinosaurs went extinct before man even got here. And yet some of them lived with great pain. A recent discovery of a T-Rex fossil shows this. This dinosaur was quite old when it died. Earlier, it had suffered a broken leg and broken ribs, which had healed. It lived in terrible pain. Now, I don't think that this pain is the result of creation. It's the result of sin. It's certainly not very good, as God pronounced his completed creation back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more on creation, visit our website at www.icr.org.
Yes, this is Crosstalk on the VCY America Radio Network. Again, we do thank Sandy for her work compiling many of the stories that hopefully we'll be able to bring you inside of this hour, and maybe, God willing, even have some time to open up the phone lines and hear from you. Pastor Richard Schmidt is with us. Over 35 years of law enforcement, former sheriff of Milwaukee County here in southeast Wisconsin, now serving as pastor and Bible prophecy teacher, serving at Union Grove Baptist Church, and, of course, husband to your wife, Valerie, and your family. And we appreciate our brother in Christ being here with us again today and to all this week. Pastor, some of your takeaways on last night.
Yeah, there's so many things that happened last night, and I wish we could go through a bunch of the speakers, but of course our time is limited here. So I think let's go right to the most important piece for those that missed the speech. And let's hear Kamala Harris actually receiving and accepting that presidential nomination.
For a simple reason. In our system of justice, a harm against any one of us is a harm against all of us. And I would often explain this to console survivors of crime, to remind them no one should be made to fight alone. We are all in this together. And every day in the courtroom, I stood proudly before a judge and I said 5 words: Kamala Harris for the people. And to be clear, my entire career, I've only had one client, the people. And so, on behalf of the people, on behalf of every American, regardless of party, race, gender, or the language your grandmother speaks, on behalf of my mother and everyone who has ever set out on their own unlikely journey, on behalf of Americans like the people I grew up with, people who work hard, chase their dreams, and look out for one another, on behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
Well, there you have it. And obviously, she made it very clear that she is standing for what she calls the people, and really tried to pull in, if you will, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, that she's speaking for and representing all people. So again, it was a brilliantly put together speech, and she obviously now is indeed the presidential candidate from the Democratic Party. Now we need to get down to business, though. And what are the things that, if you will, We want to have a balanced report. So if we look at the Republican platform and we look at the Democrat platform, we need to start understanding now what indeed are the issues. So let's go to the next clips will be a bit shorter. And looking at her comments about saving programs.
This is personal for me. The middle class is where I come from. My mother kept a strict budget. We lived within our means, yet we wanted for little. And she expected us to make the most of the opportunities that were available to us and to be grateful for them. Because, as she taught us, opportunity is not available to everyone. That's why we will create what I call an opportunity economy where everyone has the chance to compete and a chance to succeed. Whether you live in a rural area, small town, or big city. And as president, I will bring together labor and workers and small business owners and entrepreneurs and American companies to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to lower the cost of everyday needs like health care and housing and groceries. We will provide access to capital for small business owners and entrepreneurs and founders. And we will end America's housing shortage and protect Social Security and Medicare.
Pastor.
Well, again, she's starting now to lay out some of the policies that we've been really wondering where she's going to be at. First time I've heard that statement used, not to say it was the first time, but now she's talking about an opportunity economy. All right, well, this is where it really becomes interesting when we look at the two parties. What does an opportunity economy mean? Well, the one thing that, of course, has not been addressed is how is all of this going to be paid for? So what tax bracket is going to be paying for all these things? The current administration, the Biden administration, Biden-Harris for that matter, administration, has talked about that they're going to tax, if you will, the most wealthy. 750 billionaires exist in the United States today, and to my knowledge, the billionaire taxes have not been increased, which was part of the current party's administration platform 4 years ago. So that, to my knowledge, has failed to materialize. So where's all that money going to come from? Well, either the taxes somewhere have to go up, or we're just going to keep printing money and increasing the national debt, which appears to be the case. So we have this opportunity economy talking about building 300 million homes. That's government saying they're going to build these homes and somehow subsidize new property owners $25,000 to help them get a home. Where is this massive amount of money going to come from? Well, again, those that have done the analysis believe that's about a $1.7 trillion addition to the budget. Where's that money going to come from? Again, the Republican National Convention came out. They're for cutting taxes. They're for, if you will, holding the tax line and even reducing some. But you cannot, how do you pay for these programs? And that answer we still do not have.
It all sounds wonderful, that what they're promising and the things they're going to do. However, she's currently in power, and these things are apparently not taking place.
Right, and it's interesting. And again, we're trying to give a balanced report, but we've got to be honest. If they're going to put out this type of a platform, then you've got to be able to explain to the American people where the money's going to come from.
Correct.
The one thing very quickly also, she talked about Social Security and Medicare being cut by, if you will, if President Trump is reelected. Their platform has been very clear that they have no intentions of harming Social Security or Medicare. So it appears that a little fact check might find that that particular issue isn't quite as presented by Kamala Harris last night. Well, let's see what else we've got as far as clips go today.
The next one here, a third clip that we'll share about halfway into her speech last night.
I believe America cannot truly be prosperous unless Americans are fully able to make their own decisions about their own lives, especially on matters of heart and home. But tonight, in America, too many women are not able to make those decisions. And let's be clear about how we got here.
All right, so what do we have here? Again, this has been a major platform issue for the last 4 days. Constant rhetoric about the abortion issue. And I'm sure that many of our listeners, there may be some that are on either side of the coin here, but the issue is, where's President Trump versus Kamala Harris on this? President Trump, of course, has said we don't want this to be a federal issue, and has, if you will, pushed it back to the states, and that's currently very much where we are. It's interesting that the American public, a great percentage of it, especially the Democrats, do want the federal government to make that decision instead of the states. So again, reproductive freedom is what they're calling it. It really boils down to the topic of abortion. And this is a major issue, and we're going to see a lot of people voting based on that single issue. Well, another one that I'm very interested in that she just basically, she being Kamala Harris, touched on last night is the border security issue. And I believe we have a little bit of a statement about that.
Yes, just before we do, though, back to this previous clip, and yes, how many people are being motivated to go to the polls just because of the life issue. Where should the Christian be on that one, Pastor? That is a question that many folks are still wondering, because we know that even those in the Catholic Church are divided on the subject, and we know that from the top of that, and we have many theological differences with the Catholic Church, but even at the top of their leadership, if you will, they are pro-life. But yet so many, including our current president, Joe Biden, are pro-choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the issue. And we have to give a balanced report when it comes to this. We've seen the Democratic position. I mean, it's absolutely, it's unequivocally, they are very, very, very much on pro-abortion, if you will, pro-choice. The Republican ticket, again, if we've got to be honest about this, has retracted some of its stance that it held, if you will, when President Trump ran last time. J.D. Vance, President Trump, no, they're not hard down on abolishing all abortions at this point. So again, I know this is from a Christian standpoint, it's disturbing. Many folks, of course, listening, absolutely. I mean, they spend a great deal of their life fighting the abortion issue and trying to make if you will, a pro-life position, and I very much appreciate that. So regardless of who you vote for this coming November, you're not going to get a strong conservative Christian pro-life position, regardless of who you vote for. So again, I put this out there as we have the last 4 days. When you go to the polls, we're voting for an individual that, to the best of what they're going to do, are going to allow Christians to continue practicing. They'll keep churches open. They'll allow, if you will, evangelism to take place. And here's one thing that I want to throw out there very quickly. Just because the government says you can have abortion doesn't mean you have to go have one. The government has nothing against lying, has nothing against, if you will, being unkind to your neighbor, has nothing about you can't get drunk, which are all things from a Christian perspective we wouldn't do. Sure. So again, regardless of what the government says is okay by either party, we need to maintain our Christian values.
And that's where the Christian goes to the Word of God, and we find out where God would be on these subjects. And we praise God for the truth that He has provided to all of us through His Word, that we might know how to motivate in truly these dark and very tempting times. We are up against a break. We'll come back. Pastor was about to share the clip from last night at the Democratic National Convention. Kamala Harris did go to talk a little bit about border security. Border security. maybe someday. Stand with us. Our society is being influenced by the entertainment media, and we don't even realize it. Why is it that many Christians entertain themselves by watching movies or programs that take God's name in vain, or feature sensual activity on Saturday night, and then go to church on Sunday to praise His name? That's the underlying message in the DVD Power of the Air by Dave Cristiano. This moving story features a missionary from Africa who warns that the church in America is being deceived and in great danger. A Christian that hears this message is convicted and makes a significant change in his life and sets out a plan to reach his city with the gospel. Watch this story unfold in the DVD Power of the Air. Available now for a donation of $18. Call 1-800-729-9829. 1-800-729-9829. Friday brings a news roundup and comments to Crosstalk on the VCY America radio network. Again, in for Jim Schneider this week, Dalton Windsor, and Mike Side with us today is Pastor Richard Schmidt, a Bible and pastor and Bible prophecy teacher, and over 32 years of law enforcement experience. We're thrilled to have his being with us today as well. Just before the break, we were about to share some of the comments last night from Vice President Kamala Harris on her stance for border security and several other things.
And let me be clear, after decades in law enforcement, I know the importance of safety and security, especially at our border. Last year, Joe and I brought together Democrats and conservative Republicans to write the strongest border bill in decades. The Border Patrol endorsed it. But Donald Trump believes a border deal would hurt his campaign. So he ordered his allies in Congress to kill the deal. Well, I refuse to play politics with our security, and here is my pledge to you. As president, I will bring back the bipartisan border security bill that he killed, and I will sign it into law. I know we can live up to our proud heritage as a nation of immigrants and reform our broken immigration system. We can create an earned pathway to citizenship and secure our border. And America, we must also be steadfast in advancing our security and values abroad.
Now, Kamala Harris saying that we can create an earned pathway to citizenship and secure our border and America. She's been at this now a little while, but nothing has happened yet.
Well, this is one of the most disturbing clips that we played because it absolutely is built off of a very, very false premise. President Trump, when he was in office, literally shut the border down. He spent a large sum of money building the wall, if you will, in the southern border. There was an executive order that President Trump had put out that basically did all but shut the border down, except for those coming in legally. That is a documented fact. The first week that President Joe Biden was in office, he signed that bill or that executive order that stopped, if you will, what President Trump had done. So this quite frankly is as close to being deceptive as you can get. This is untrue. All it would have taken is President Biden to retract the executive order that he put into play the first week of office, and we would not have had the millions and millions of people coming in. Also, we've heard the clips. They've been on multiple media stations whereby President or Vice President Harris has made it very clear that under no circumstances would a person coming in illegally be charged, if you will, or sent back. It's very clear, and it's her voice that's stating it with her face. So what do we know about border security? Well, Again, this has been a huge issue. It's a matter of national security. It's a matter of potential domestic terrorism. Are all individuals coming over the border criminals? No. And we'll agree to that. But is there a great percentage that we know, absolutely know, that have come in and has been reported by Border Patrol, the FBI, and other agencies? This is, it's a major issue of national security. And now all of a sudden to come up with, well, I'm going to fix this and fix how people can come in. It's, quite frankly, we just got to be honest, this is very, very deceptive and disturbing to me.
Because it's not happening now, and so many wish that we did have this safety and these things in place because, well, we have kids and we have grandkids and we want a good future for them, and we see what's happening. She mentioned the housing crisis that may be a surprise to some people, but, and you and I have talked about that. If there's a housing crisis, and she's reporting that there is, well, when you have millions and millions and millions of people and undocumented people coming in, doesn't that cause that issue? Absolutely.
There's a shortage of housing because we have millions of people breaking through the borders. Not breaking through, being welcomed through the borders. Where are you going to house them? They're in airports. They're in hotels. We have undocumented individuals, being kind, that are in every major city right now, including where we're broadcasting from. So again, these are issues that are going to come out. The people need to weigh them. They need to examine what is truth. And of course, that's what we're looking for here on Crosstalk, trying to get people to get educated, if you will, on these issues and make intelligent decisions.
Listening friend, we brought you coverage of the RNC back in July, and we've simply been endeavoring to do the same for the DNC here this week. And our next clip from Vice President Harris last night.
As Vice President, I have confronted threats to our security, negotiated with foreign leaders, strengthened our alliances, and engaged with our brave troops overseas. As Commander-in-Chief, I will ensure America always has the strongest, most lethal fighting force in the world. And I will fulfill our sacred obligation to care for our troops and their families, and I will always honor and never disparage their service and their sacrifice. I will make sure that we lead the world into the future on space and artificial intelligence, that America, not China, wins the competition for the 21st century, and that we strengthen, not abdicate, our global leadership.
Well, I would applaud. I would stand up and applaud for these statements as well. Well stated. The issue is when we look at the current administration versus the prior administration, the Trump administration, there's been a significant downturn as far as the amount of, if you will, military weapons, military ships, military vehicles. Every single military outlet, except for the Marines, are the only one that have been rated as having increased in strength during the current administration. So again, these are things that I'm encouraging those that are listening today. There's many, many different outlets where you can get educated on these things. But again, look at what took place during the Trump administration, what took place during the Biden administration. I appreciate Vice President Harris making the strong statements she did. But the issue is, how are you going to back up those statements? Are they simply promises, or do you actually have a way to make them come to fruition?
And have they been doing that while they're presently in office? Many people, I think of Jesus and how he even said, we know a tree by its fruit. We know the positions and your opinions and the things you're going to do by what you have been doing. And so that all sounds great, but will that happen under a Harris-Walz administration? And that's the big question.
Right. And again, we don't know. We're trying to give everyone the benefit of the doubt today and give a balanced approach, but based on if things continue to go in the direction they've gone under the current administration, it's highly suspect.
One more clip, our final clip from Kamala last night.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7, including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over again. The scale of suffering is heartbreaking. President Biden and I are working to end this war such that Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination. And know this, I will never hesitate to take whatever action is necessary to defend our forces and our interests against Iran and Iran-backed terrorists.
Pastor Schmidt, a lot said there. Again, a lot sounding positive, but really pointing toward a two-state solution without really saying it, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, I just got to pause for a minute and talk about what she said here, because I'm sitting on the couch with my wife. We're listening to this particular clip. And both of us, simultaneous, let out gigantic wows. This is the first time that anyone from the Biden administration, and of course she's trying to break away from that, I believe, at this point, making a very, very strong statement about protecting Israel and standing behind our ally. This, quite frankly, was breaking news, quite frankly, as to her position on it. But, of course, every good thing has an opposite here. So after she makes this very strong statement about Israel, which, I'll be honest, I appreciated.
Sure.
Then she talked about the Palestinian piece, getting them, if you will, peace and safety and back to a normalcy. So, again, this is politics. And, folks, never, ever forget this is politics. And Kamala Harris, as well as former President Trump, they want to get elected, and they're going to say the right things. But again, you just brought up the two-state solution. That's a non-starter for the people in Israel. It's a non-starter for the Palestinians. The Palestinians, the Muslims, believe that land belongs to them. The Jewish people, according to biblical truth, know it belongs to them. So this divide, it's a political piece that the politicians who don't understand the war in Gaza, the war in Israel, if you will, between the Muslims and the Israelis, it is a religious war, not a land war, and both of those sides are going to fight to the death to maintain their religious position, if you will.
And what should the Christian position be, as we've constantly looked at this week? Where do we stand on this two-state solution from a Christian standpoint?
Right. Again, Genesis chapter 15 lays out the land that God has for Israel. They only have 10% of the land that God promised to give to them. They will get that land during what's known as the millennial kingdom, which is still something to come. It's future. So, again, there is no such thing as a two-state solution in the Scriptures. It's a one-state solution, and it's called Israel.
Wow. This 1-hour program is flying by. Final segment, we're going to come back, look at just a couple of quick headlines of other stories that have surfaced from this week that are worth mentioning here on a Friday News Roundup and Comments. Stay with us.
For the Worldview Report, I'm Brandon House. Our website's worldviewtube.com. It is all over social media this week. So-called conservative commentator Candace Owens is spewing what can only be described as vile and disgusting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. And sadly, as you go through the threads of people commenting, many of them are agreeing, and yet they claim to be all about conservative traditional values, or MAGA. My friends, I'm here to warn you. Anti-Semitism is not only infiltrating the MAGA crowd, it's infiltrating many of our so-called evangelical churches and institutions. The Bible said this would happen. Now listen, much of what she is saying, Candace, is out of context. We did a show recently where we put many of these quotes from the Talmud back in context. Be very careful, folks. The Bible has a lot to say about the sin of anti-Semitism. I'm Brandon House.
As always, on a Friday News Roundup and Comment, there is that stack of stories that Sandy will compile for Jim. And on the top of that stack of stories, not even mentioning all that we've been talking about with the DNC this week. But did you catch this one, listening friend? This one from PJ Media being reporting back on Wednesday, and other news sources have reported on this one as well. The Bureau of Labor had to come clean this week, revising down its wildly inflated job numbers for the year through the month of March. The report revealing that the Biden-Harris administration brazenly overstating job creation by a staggering 818,000, okay? Edward Lawrence of Fox Business reporting, it is a huge revision, down 818,000 fewer jobs. Manufacturing was down 115,000 people. So this is a revision down, a significant revision down, the largest in 15 years that we've seen. The largest downward revision in jobs in 15 years. He continues that it shows weakness in the job markets over the past year that we didn't realize was there, but we know is there. Construction down 45,000. So that is a big one that has been pushed to the back burner this week, largely due to the DNC in Chicago. Newsmax reporting the House's three-committee impeachment inquiry released a report Monday morning finding that President Joe Biden has engaged in impeachable conduct, including an abuse of power when he was vice president and obstruction of justice as president to cover his family's global influence peddling racket to defraud the U.S. The executive summary of the 292-page impeachment report released by the House Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means Committee said the totality of the corrupt conduct uncovered by the committees is egregious. President Joe Biden conspired to commit influence, peddling, and grift. In doing so, he abused his office and, by repeatedly lying about his abuse of office, has defrauded the United States to enrich his family. And moving on, one more here from Just the News. News out of Ohio this week. The Ohio Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, sent the names of nearly 600 non-citizens who registered to vote to Attorney General Dave Yost for possible prosecution. Of those nearly 600 non-citizens, LaRose says 138 appear to have voted in an election in Ohio when federal records showed they were not even legal citizens. LaRose said, I'm duty-bound to make sure people who haven't yet earned citizenship in this country that they do not vote in our elections. The law requires me to refer these individuals to the Attorney General. That's what we're doing. LaRose launched an extensive citizenship verification audit of the state's voting system this year, and I guess we'll see where that goes from here. But, Pastor, these are some of those headlines that clearly just got pushed aside due to, obviously, all that's been going on in Chicago.
Right. Well, there's so much taking place, and the news is constant, so appreciate those updates. They are critical things that are taking place. Well, and I'd like to go, if we can, one of the clips that we're going to play that we haven't gotten to yet. We want to switch off of Kamala Harris right now, and I think there's a very interesting clip from the VP candidate for the Democratic group from Tim Walz that I'd like to just quickly go over and let the people hear.
Sitting governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, of course, winning the Veep Stakes, running with Kamala Harris, and he's really unknown to much of the country, but we're learning more about him, including statements such as this.
Don't ever shy away from our progressive values. One person's socialism is another person's neighborliness. Just do the work. So I got to tell you, when I see this, it lifts me up. I'm inspired. I see it.
That was not from last night. That was a former clip that has been floating around a while.
Yeah, and it's what I think the reason why it's important that people hear this is we've got to get back to what is truth. So when we're looking at the Democratic platform, we're looking at a socialistic, very strong socialism that's involved. It's take from the rich, give to the poor, take from whomever, take from the government, print more money, whatever it takes. Folks, when you hear all these wonderful things that were talked about last week, who's going to pay for them? Now you look at President Trump, the Republican platform. It's not about seeing how much more money can be spent. Big government is a problem. And again, we go to the scriptures, Revelation chapter 13. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt, one day this economy is going to disappear, and it's going to be under a one-world economy, one-world government, and one world religion under the Antichrist. Again, just read Revelation 13. So I know we've only got a few minutes left. I want to segue real quick into, I think, something, because I so much appreciate being on the last 5 days on Crosstalk. And many times you've called me pastor, and I appreciate that. I want to just very quickly state, why is a pastor doing this? Why is someone who works at a church, if you will, getting involved in all this? I have to go back to 2014 when Valerie and I, my wife, started what was known as Prophecy Focus Ministries. I was known as Dr. Richard Schmidt with that group, and still am. And even though I very, very much appreciate Union Grove Baptist Church allowing me to do this, this really, the reasons, yes, as a pastor, I totally agree with everything that we've gone through and supporting these things. But when we look at this, these issues are so important from a prophetic scenario as well as a current picture as a pastor. So I'm encouraging all of God's people. I'm encouraging pastors, those in Christian leadership. These things, if we're not informed, how are our people going to know, if you will, what to vote for, how to vote? How are they going to protect our Christian liberties? How are they going to protect Scripture? How are they going to protect their churches and evangelism and outreaches that we're currently involved in? If this country turns to a socialist, Marxist, even communist agenda, it could be the end of Christianity as we know it. We may end up being forced to go underground, just as many other countries are. So these things are extremely critical for the Christian community.
Pastor, when you already have these freedoms, what a shame to have lost them because we simply would not say anything. We simply would no longer vote when those freedoms were already ours to enjoy and to pass down to our kids and our children's kids. And so it is important. We appreciate your perspective and, of course, your love for the Word of God. And we are so thankful for your help this week. God willing, Jim will be back with us on Monday as we will press on the work that continues here on the VCY America Radio Network. From all of us here, thank you, listening friend, for joining us.
You've been listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Take Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.